Hey, everybody. How's it going? Good? Yeah? Yeah?
I know it's late on in the day, but like you guys have done a really good job.
Yeah.
Powered through.
OK, don't worry. We have a really good closing presentation for you. You know, like worked really hard on it. Really excited to share it with you guys. So it's like, all right, let's get to it. OK, all right. So developers are drawn to Firebase because it lets you create rich app experiences, gain deep customer insights, and grow their business. However, they think that they need to start from scratch. Nothing could be farther from the truth.
Well, in fact, let's say that you have a mature enough app to actually focus on things like increasing your user engagement with in-app messaging or decreasing your new user churn with push notifications. Even if you haven't been using Firebase from the start, just by adding the SDKs to an existing app, you can start iterating your user app experience to improve any of your key metrics in a thoughtful and really measured way.
At Firebase, we design our products to be standalone, easy to integrate with existing systems. Today, we're going to show you common problems that customers run into and how they solve them. Hi, everyone. I'm Rafi. This is Megha. We're both engineering managers here at Firebase, and we're here to talk to you about how to add Firebase to existing apps. For this talk, we assume that you have a high-level understanding of a lot of the different Firebase products, and we're going to focus on specific architectures and integration strategies when working with them. Let's dig in. Okay. In recent years, more and more apps are popping up with rich, real-time collaborative experiences, and they work offline or handle unreliable connections. This is a common problem for logistics companies who need live order tracking in spotty delivery zones, or media companies that have engaging live content and want their customers to be able to use it in public transit when they're going in and out of service. When developers look for ways to do this, they find Firebase. Often, they're using other databases like SQL or some other database technology. And when they look at Firestore or the real-time database, they think they have to switch. So what do? Well, we at Firebase build products knowing you work with other services. And we've built ours to meet you where you are. So guess what? You don't need to abandon what you have. You can keep your existing systems and get all the great features of real-time synchronization and offline support that Firestore provides. And I'm going to show you how. So to pull this off, we need to start with a little bit of planning. And we start by asking ourselves, for whatever our scenario is, what is the data that needs to be live? For delivery apps, this could be something like the order, its status, or the location of a driver. For media companies, you could be tracking the election, and you want to show a live vote count. Usually, this data has a life cycle to it, and you want to know where those changes happen, and you want to know where it's going on in your code base, from creation to updates to completion. Next, we think about security. Now, security is super important. We all know that. And we want to be sure that only the people that should see our data can see our data, and nobody else. Okay? So we're fundamentally asking the question, who should have access to our data? Now, there's lots of ways to do this. But for the examples that I've given, we have two models. In one case, specific users need access. So it's like the customer, the restaurant, maybe the driver. Or nobody needs access because all the data is public, like with election data. Once you know this, you can answer two really important questions. Do I need to use Firebase Auth? And what are the security rules that I need to write? So you now know what your live data is, and you know your security model. Let's map out the integration. OK. So to talk about an integration, it helps to start from a reference architecture. Now, I know everybody's architecture is different, but in most of the products we work with, there's a couple of common patterns. Okay, often a customer has a website or a mobile app, often both, and users can log into both at the same time and have multiple sessions that are active. A customer will also have an Auth Service that they can use to manage their session tokens. And lastly, they'll have an API server that can write to their database. Okay. So at a high level, when you think about the integration, what you're doing is using Firestore as a caching layer that's directly accessed by your client. Okay? Also, you're using Firebase Auth and security rules alongside your existing architecture in order to secure it. So now we know where Firestore plugs in, and we know how security will be approached. Let's talk about code. So first, we're going to go to all of our clients. And at login or startup, or really whenever your app establishes a session with your Auth service, what you want to do is you want to go to your Auth service. Then you want to talk to Firebase Auth and get your hands on a custom token that has the user ID and any custom claims that would be useful for your rules. Once you have that, you're going to give that back to your client and have it hold on to it. Once the client has it, then it's going to use that token to connect to Firestore with offline support turned on. Now, Todd and Susan just gave an amazing talk on offline support, and so there's a little bit more involved in there. But this is kind of the gist of where that comes into play here. All right, so your app is warmed up. Let's pipe some real-time data into it. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go to the backend, and we're going to find where our live data gets created. Okay? For a delivery company, it could be when an order gets created. For an election, it could be when a candidate is registered or polling starts. Wherever it is, you want to go there. And once you're there, you want to create a document with a little bit of starter data, just the bits that need to be live. And you want to put it into Firestore. Once Firestore has it, it's going to pass that along to the client. Now, also, as part of this, you want to tell your client where this live data is going to be so it can listen for live updates on it. Now, make sure that your client is also remembering where to listen. Because if your app restarts or the browser gets refreshed, it needs to know where to rehydrate the connection and start listening for updates again. Now, your backend could be written in anything. Node, Python, even Java. Okay? Wherever it is, our admin SDKs are there to meet you where you are so that you can talk to Firestore and put these objects in. So once that data is written, the client will automatically start to receive it, and it'll start to render it. And that's it to get it started. OK, so the client is connected. It's listening for updates. It's got its first bit of live data. What's next? Well, we go back to our server and ask another question. What is the life cycle of our data? For a delivery app, it could be when the order is being prepared, when it's out for delivery, or a last-minute change happens to it. For election data, it could be when the polls open or when votes start coming in. Whatever it is, you want to find all those places in your backend, and you want to update the same document that you created earlier with whatever the new data is. And the moment that that document gets updated, it's going to get propagated to all the clients across all their sessions, across all their devices that are listening for it. And just like before, you'll use whatever admin SDKs match your tech stack. If you're using more than one tech stack, like if some of your operations happen out of band, you'll just use more than one SDK. Okay? All right. So the data is live. The client's getting updated. What else is there to do? Everybody's favorite part, cleanup. Okay? Here, we're going to do the exact same thing that we did in all the previous steps, which is we need to find where our live data isn't needed anymore. So for delivery, it'll be when the order completes. For the election, it could be when the polls close. You want to go there just like before and use the admin SDKs to delete the data from Firestore, tell the client to stop listening for it, and have it forget about that path. Because now that the data is dead, if the app restarts or the browser refreshes, you don't care about it anymore. So this more or less covers the integration. Now, with this setup, what do we have here? Well, at the highest level, we've tapped into the lifecycle of the data. And anytime something happens to it, from creation to update to deletion, we're just updating Firestore. Okay? You see, the beauty of this approach is that your backend doesn't need to care about the client at all. It just keeps sending the relevant the data that needs to get updated straight to Firestore. All of your clients, across all of your sessions, across all of your devices, are always going to get the latest view. If connectivity is lost with any of them, you don't need to worry about it, because Firestore is going to hold that state, and when the app comes back online, it's going to pull the latest view and be able to render it. Security is covered with Firebase Auth and security rules, ensuring your data is safe and the wrong people don't see it. Now, let's pull back to our architecture. See, you didn't have to leave your existing database. Okay? See how it harmonizes together? And there you go. How to use Firestore as your caching layer and your real-time synchronization with offline support. All right, so now we've got our app. So how do we get users to come in and stay? This is a really hard part of any app. And we all stumble here. It's a really tough problem. Fortunately, I have a resident expert here with me to tell you all about it. Megha?
Thanks, Rafi. So it's really exciting how Firebase can meet developers wherever they are in building their app. So building a great app is critical, but we all know that running a live app is more than just that. We want to keep users engaged with high quality and truly delightful content that is both relevant and timely. Sometimes we think of building an app and growing your app as two completely different, disparate workflows. But with your engineering team very focused on building and maintaining the app, and your product team really focused on growing your business. But aren't things better together? I don't know if you know this about me. This is my favorite phrase, because it's really true. Things are better together when you actually have a bunch of different teams working together and not having those barriers. Firebase has the tools to make this a really collaborative process and break down those barriers. We help app developers, PMs, and the whole team work together to build that really enjoyable user experience. Firebase has the tools to help you bridge that gap between build and grow. And you can start benefiting from them regardless of how mature your product is and how much has already been built. So a lot of people, when they think about growth, they tend to focus on acquisition, user acquisition. And don't get me wrong, it's super important. As a side note, if you haven't looked into AdMob publishing, take a look. That will be really helpful there. But in order to best leverage those newly acquired users, you have to make sure that they stick. How do you ensure that users are spending time and coming back to your app? Let's take a very specific focus, increasing user engagement, in an app that is new to Firebase, but already live and doing great. So it can be more important to have 50 super, really dedicated users than have thousands of casual users. But Firebase can help improve your user engagement and turn more of those casual users into super users. We provide you the tools to help create a truly tailored and personalized experience. So that's really cool and all, but what can Firebase actually add here? Let's take a look with the help of some case studies. So the first one, Cleveny. Cleveny is a really cool company that's focused on smart utilities and has a bunch of different apps. It has a global audience and tons of users. But they're having an issue with discoverability. Users were missing out on a lot of really amazing secondary functionality, and worse, they weren't hitting the pages that Cleveny had instrumented with ads. They had tons and tons of eyeballs, but were missing that extra link to actually monetize them, which I don't know about you, but I think that's a tragedy. So they wanted to make some changes to their app, and they turned to Firebase for help. So there were two really big challenges that they had. First, they had to be able to change the app's behavior dynamically without having an app update, to be able to play around between two different options. Then, second, they had to split the app's traffic to compare the performance between the two groups. With remote config, you can do both of these without any difficulties. So I'm going to show a code snippet here to wire up remote config to allow you to dynamically change the app's behavior. This sample will be in Android, but RC supports iOS, and as you all heard in the keynote, web as well. So first what you have to do is go to remote config programmatically and get the parameter that you care about. In this case, native ad design. Once you've gotten that from the server, you'll actually start gating your logic in your app based on the value in that parameter. So in this case, if the ad design equals big size, we want to display a native ad where the size and the call to action are bigger than the normal one. And in the else case, we want to display the normal native ad. So we could have chosen to use a Boolean or maybe an enum with a bunch of different options here if we wanted to. But in this case, we just wanted to experiment with those two variants. So after releasing the update and ensuring that enough folks have actually updated and have this new code and this new logic, we can move on to the Firebase console. So by creating a condition here in remote config, we can split the traffic between 50% using a random kind of percentile. When you actually do this creation of a remote config parameter or condition, you can apply several different criteria when you're building it, such as filtering based on language or country or some of the audiences that you generated in analytics. So here is an example of the design before and after. The difference is significant, maybe not on the screen here, but especially if you're on a tiny phone. By testing to improve this native ad design, we're now ready to go on to the next step. Feature discoverability. So drawing attention to the in-app advanced features is really important so that users will notice them, learn how to use them quickly and effectively, and eventually stay longer in the app, generating more revenue for you, the developer. So Cleveni wanted to highlight some key features that were unique to ClevCalc, one of their apps. To help with a smoother adoption process, they decided to leverage push notifications and launch something they called the tip of the day. So the tip of the day was designed to be a more subtle form of offering assistance that could display tips on some of this advanced functionality, making the information available but not necessarily hammering or bombarding the user. So first what they did was they figured out how were they able to track users who are visiting the help center, the place where all of this advanced functionality was like detailed. They decided to log a custom event, users seen activity help, and this was done programmatically in their app. That's all they had to do programmatically, so let's go back to the Firebase console. In the Firebase console, they were able to create a new audience that was based on whether this custom event had been fired. So in this case, we're saying a new user, if there are users seeing activity help, and you have at least one triggering of that event, so you've at least been to the help page once. Now they moved on to the Firebase Cloud Messaging console, and that's where they were able to configure the push notifications they wanted to send to their users. So this screenshot shows part of the Cloud Messaging Compose UI. And as you can see here, you can set the message content, schedule when it's going to be delivered or if it's recurring, and then go into the targeting, which is the cool part. Also, one thing to note, you can also provide images here if you want to show an image notification, but here we're just focusing on text. So going into the targeting part, which is one of the most powerful features of cloud messaging, because you're able to target users based on audiences that were defined in analytics. So they used 3 different audiences to make sure they're targeting the right user. I'll go over what they are first and explain why they're important. So in specific, they made sure to exclude users who are a member of at least one of these audiences. The first one is active users, premium. These are users that they think are very important, and they don't necessarily want to interfere with them. Or people who have gone to the help center at least once, because if they've already gone to the help center, they know where it is. You don't need to remind them. And finally, purchasers. These are users who have actually made in-app purchases. Now, the reason they wanted to exclude these people is these people are already doing those high-value actions that Cleveni liked. They didn't want to distract the users who are already doing all the right things with all of this extra information. And all of this, as you saw, could be done super easily using the Firebase console directly from Firebase. So if their users weren't a purchaser and had never been to the Help Center page before, they would get this push notification as a tip of the day. If they click on it, they can navigate via a Firebase dynamic link and get to the actual help screen page, which had a bunch of pro tips that could help them learn more about the advanced features. Now, this is really cool. It was very easy to do, but what was the actual result? So it was actually spectacular and a great success, and I'm not exaggerating that. So they were able to increase their ad mob revenue. They were able to increase their user engagement. But better yet, they saw no change in app uninstalls. They weren't hammering or annoying their users because they were able to be really targeted and really focus on the users who actually could benefit from this information. So this is really cool and all, but what other types of apps can Firebase help? Games are actually a place where Firebase can fit really well into existing apps. So let's talk about a few of them. First, Dan the Man. So Half-Baked Games was able to use Firebase to increase revenue, not just increase user engagement. So they constructed a Firebase A/B test where users were gifted credits. So the control group received no credits. One group received credits at level 3. And the third group only received credits if they were in the Firebase prediction will churn segment. So these were folks who Firebase was able to predict were likely to churn. The users in the will churn test group had a 20% increase in 7-day retention versus the other groups. As another example, Rockbite Games was able to use predictions in a slightly different way, based on the prediction of spending or not spending. They used Firebase Remote Config to dynamically change their in-store game for these two groups. They actually discovered that players were more likely to make in-app purchases if these cute little animated chests were featured at the top of the store. So they also gave users who were in the unlikely to spend, so unlikely to make in-app purchase group, the option of viewing an ad to earn in-game currency, being able to monetize these users who would otherwise be unreachable. So Firebase was able to help Rockbite boost revenue by 25%. So we've seen that you can use a bunch of different Firebase tools kind of combined, like cloud messaging, Firebase dynamic links, remote config, A/B testing, and many more. But we also have other tools to help you re-engage, increase engagement, or modify your user's experience, ensuring that more of your users are able to get a personalized and delightful experience and stay engaged. And we're also making updates to them, as you saw in the keynote, constantly, improving and iterating based on the feedback we're getting from you.
So we've also seen you can add Firestore or the real-time database as a caching layer for existing applications. But we also have services like machine learning, serverless offerings, and other products to help you build scalable, robust infrastructure that grows with you.
And though we didn't mention it in this particular talk, there are also some really great stability and performance tools that you can get just by adding the SDK.
So in closing, we at Firebase know you work with other systems and will meet you where you are.
Firebase can be used foundationally when you're just starting to build your app, or additively as you start exploring new features that you think you need.
Products are standalone and work better together.
For example, the analytics that I just showed you works really well with a lot of the engagement tools like in-app messaging or push notifications. But the really important key takeaway here is that Firebase is there for you at scale. Whether you're starting from 0 users, or maybe 2, just the development team, to millions of users, we're able to handle that and grow with you and continue to support you going forward. So I want to spend a quick second. I know everyone wants to get up, but we have a bunch of really cool, exciting closing remarks to go. So I want to send it back over to Puff and Jessica to close us out. And by the way, you all did a great job. You stayed through all of this.
Thank you.
And there are so many people still here. It's amazing to see you all.
Give yourself a round of applause.